We are here in the beautiful Lake Champlain Valley of upstate Vermont in New York. There's the lake. As you turn and look south, you start to see the Green Mountains. There's Snake Mountain, Buck Mountain off in the distance. There's Buck. Go further east and see more of the Green Mountains. And there you see Kevin. A Green Mountain himself. Well, not so much green anymore. Gray Mountain.
Graying.
Then you go back and you look over, and to the west, of course, beyond Lake Champlain, are the Adirondack Mountains of New York State. Absolutely fabulous. One of the most beautiful places on earth I've ever been. And that's why we're here doing this special Lake Champlain edition of
Special Cubs Corner edition here, and it's a history edition, so folks need to know a little bit about the history of the Cubs, and there are many, many tormentors over the years. One of the most famous...
Many years since they've won a World Series, which is how many years?
Since 1908, the last time that they won the World Series.
Yeah.
And one of the many tormentors back in 1932 was Babe Ruth with the famous so-called called shot home run at Wrigley Field, still the home of the Cubs.
Yeah.
We can't really prove or not or disprove whether he actually did.
I like it. I like the idea.
You like the idea that it was a called shot. It's romantic, it's raconteurish, whatever.
It's total Ruthian.
However, Gordon has an excellent thesis on why Babe Ruth is the best baseball player of all time. Hit it, Gordon.
It's true. Its argument goes around a lot. Who's the best baseball player of all time? I argue Babe Ruth for 5 reasons.
5 reasons?
That's
you
right,
say?
5. Reason number 5, not 2, 3, 5. Reason number 1, he was the only player who was both a great pitcher and a great hitter. Anywhere in baseball throughout the entire history, including the Negro Leagues, there's never anyone else who was both a star pitcher and a star hitter. In fact, of course, in Babe's case, such a good hitter that they actually took him off the mound so he could hit every day. Few people know that Babe Ruth set a World Series pitching record. It stood for 42 years. He pitched 29 consecutive scoreless innings. It's a record that stood for 42 years.
In the World Series.
In the World Series.
Incredible.
So, again, reason number 1, I think it's definitive right here. You can close the books right here. Only great pitcher who was also a great hitter in the history of any form of baseball.
Very strong argument, but the other 4 are good too.
Not
so
bad. They're
let's
not
hear
bad.
them. Let's hear the other 4.
Reason number 2, he hit for average as well as power. Everyone thinks of Babe Ruth, 714 home runs, one of the greatest Powerball hitters of all time. He hit for huge average. His lifetime hitting average is 342, 10th highest all time in the major leagues. So this guy was hitting for wicked average as well as great power. In fact, someone once asked him, a reporter once asked him, famous Babe story, asked him once if he wasn't trying to hit home runs, could he have hit 400 lifetime? And he said, hell kid, I could have hit 500. Given the evidence, possible.
He hit 714. I'm sorry. What are you talking about?
No, average.
Oh,
if he wasn't trying to, we may have to edit this, but if he wasn't trying to hit so many home runs, would he have hit 400
batting
average
Got
lifetime?
it.
And
My
he
fault.
said, hell kid, I would have hit 500.
My problem.
So, total Ruthian response, great hitter for average as well as for power. That's reason number 2.
Excellent.
I gotta get to a set. Prompt
Of course
number
you
3.
do. Of course you do.
My mouth is drying
Now,
up.
sometimes I don't remember the right order, so it'll be a surprise to me as well. What number 3?
Reason number 3 is he changed the game of baseball because of his power. Now, there are other people that came really close to him. Jimmy Fox was another great power hitter early on in the leagues. But basically, Babe Ruth was the one where we went from small ball inside the park to people swinging for the fences. For several years in his mid-career, he hit more home runs in a season than entire other teams in the major league hit. You know, and he just revolutionized the game of baseball in that sense.
I think there was one year where he hit more homers than the rest of the American League batters combined.
Something like it was just
year.
insane how many he was hitting compared to everyone else.
So now I remember what number 4 is going to be, and number 5, and they're both good.
Number 4, he saved the game of baseball. After the Black Sox scandal of 1919.
The Chicago Black Sox.
Chicago.
So there's
not
the
Cubs.
Not the Cubs. The Black
the
Sox.
White Sox. We need another hat. Where's the props?
No, but there's a Chicago connection.
So after the White Sox scandal of 1919, he went and had one of the greatest years of his career. I think he hit either 58 or 59 home runs that year, which was another record. And basically people, they were actually talk about ending baseball or breaking up baseball or doing radical
because
things
of the scandal,
because
of
of the
gambling,
scandal.
yeah.
And basically people were
Throwing
just
the
so
World Series.
entranced by Babe Ruth and this, huge quest he was on and all the home runs he was hitting. He brought them back to the game. Most people acknowledge he kind of saved the game of baseball in 1920. Well, we're actually filming, so if you give us just one moment,
You don't
we'll
mind
be
being
done.
on YouTube?
Yeah, so,
All right.
So, reason number 5.
Number 5, and this is a good one. This is
My
a good
favorite
one.
reason, very appropriate that we're here in a brewery. He did all of this while he was drunk. Performance inhibiting drug. There's steroids. They used to do coke back in the 70s. All performance enhancing. Alcohol, absolute performance inhibiting drug. He was drunk all the time he was doing this shit. No question he could have hit 400 lifetime if he wasn't drinking so heavily. So those are the 5 reasons why Babe Ruth is the greatest baseball player who ever lived.
Impossible to refute.
Impossible.
There we go. Today's history lesson on Cubs Corner.
There
Thanks,
you go.
Gordon.
And thank you, Cubs.
Welcome back, friends. This is the part of hashtag 15 years.
14 years.
Where we impart some of the most important information for the future, as people are going to need to learn to grow their own food.
Absolutely.
So luckily, we have a master gardener, Gordon Clark, here for his segment, Gordon in the Garden.
And for this part of the segment, I'm going to put on my master gardener hat.
Here we are in the Callahan Park Community Garden. It's one of dozens of community gardens here in the community garden happy city of Burlington, Vermont. In fact, the Community Garden Network, Community and School Garden Network, has over 400 community gardens listed in the state of Vermont.
So the $1.5 trillion that we're going to spend on this jet that no one needs because no one's that level of threat to us, $1.5 trillion would pay for free college education for everyone in America for 20 years. But no, we can't have that. We need more F-35s.
Most expensive weapon system in human history. But
Okay.
let's talk about tomatoes.
So, we're talking today about vertical growth. A great concept to keep in mind when you're trying to save space or maximize production in a small space in your garden. This first example, tomatoes. Most people don't think of them as vertically growing plants. They are vines, and if you let them, they would just grow along the ground. Most people, like here, like I'm using right now, are using cages to keep them up. But you can see, like over here, they will even start growing above the cages. And what I'm going to do is actually get a couple of tall hoops, like ribs from a hoop house, and put them and hang strings, and then you tie the vines and they keep growing up. And if you want to point the camera this way, here's a great example of someone doing that in an authentic Vermont fashion. They've built this wonderful creative stick furniture piece, and they tie strings, and you tie the tomatoes to the strings and you get them to grow up. So this is a great example of vertical gardening using tomatoes. Cucumbers are another plant that you can do vertical growth with. Here's a beautiful example of someone who trained these up, not only these type of forms, but also the side of the garden fence. And as you can see, although they've done a lot of harvesting, here's an example of a cucumber growing up the side of this fence. Here's another beautiful example of the rustic Vermont style of stick forms for your vertical gardening. This one has bean plants growing up it. Two plants which are great, two vegetables which are great for vertical growing are peas and beans. We'll give you an example each. This is a nice setup for peas, and you can see they've got a lovely crop going here. These again would be falling all over, they'd be on the ground, but these now will attach themselves to these strings growing up. You don't even need to tie them, they do the work themselves, and these will grow 6-7 feet high if you plant them early enough. So here's another good example with a bean plant, and I just want to point out, it's like you can see this is vertical growth. It's really only taken up about a foot of your garden space, and yet you can grow these up 3, 4, 5 feet. and you get tremendous beans. I don't know if you can see it, like this one right here.
Awesome bean.
And here, in terms of innovation and thriftiness, someone has used what appears to be an old bed frame for their vertical gardening with the beans that they're growing here. Love it. Last thing I wanted to point out, I see too many fences around gardens that are not occupied by anything. They're just keep clean of weeds. Here in Burlington, an awful lot of garden fences, they actually grow things like grapes on them. So here's a perfect example. Again, it's vertical gardening, where using this otherwise unused space of a fence, they've planted these grapes, and as you can see, we're going to start getting lovely bunches of grapes out of this to eat. Why not use the space to grow food as opposed to just leave it empty?
Look at those grapes. Delicious.
Food for the people. So these are not particularly good examples of vertical gardening, but I just want to show you these to give you an example of just how much food you can get out of a small community garden. Look at the tomatoes that are ripe here right now. You could be eating sandwiches and putting up sauce.
Gazpacho. I'd be making gazpacho every day.
Amazing. You know, these are all just off a few square feet of plants. Really remarkable production. Beautiful, organic, fresh as fresh can be. We just took the ferry across beautiful Lake Champlain from Charlotte, Vermont to Essex, New York, here in the Adirondacks, by the way, and we just stopped to get a quick bite and drink, and Kevin wandered behind the town hall, and lo and behold, town community garden here in Essex. All raised boxes, not as big as some of the owners are looking at, like my community yesterday.
It's a small town,
But it's a small town. But you know, some great stuff. You know, you can see, you're looking before the eggplants. They're getting a lot of eggplants coming in here. Their cherry tomatoes are going great. Their regular tomatoes are going great. They have different herbs around here, some cucumbers. So even in relatively small raised beds like this, you can get a lot of great production.
A lot of good looking basil there.
The flowers are beautiful. Love flowers in the garden. You gotta have flowers in the garden. One thing that's interesting on this sign that I want to point out, particularly for my friends in Montgomery County, Maryland, is that up here, both in Vermont and here in Essex County, New York, across the lake, they are community and school gardens. Community and school gardens are linked together programmatically in a way that does not happen in other places like my former home and your current home, Kevin, Montgomery County. So that's a word for my friends in Montgomery County and elsewhere. I don't know, bureaucracy. You know, the school system has never really supported school gardens to begin with. You know, they're just little pockets of people who support it. So, yeah, so I don't know all the good reasons, but it's the best thing is to have community and school gardens together.
Good eye that you caught that. I saw that too, but I didn't necessarily think it was novel or rare.
It is now.
So here in hashtag 15, one thing that's been implicit but we should make explicit is our love for nature and for the planet, and of course that's why we're so concerned and partly why we're doing these shows. And I think part of the problem is people don't get out. I mean, in the United States, people don't get out in the woods, in the lakes, in the rivers. What did you call it?
In the garden. Nature Deficit Disorder,
Nature
NDD.
Deficit Disorder. And maybe because we're disconnected, that's why we're so ignorant about climate change and the effects of humanity. So we've been lucky so far. We've been filming from gorgeous places. We were first in the Finger Lakes in New York, then the Green Mountains in Vermont, and now the Adirondacks in New York. Just taking a short hike, but people need to get out more. Certainly where I live, DC, it's only 2 hours or less to the Shenandoah National Park. And look at this. Priceless view.
And hopefully we'll get even more priceless view in a moment.
You bet. Here we are, a beautiful sunset after a hard day of shooting. Our third show, which will we lose first?
We only shot for about 15 minutes.
Well, it was, you know.
There was a lot of production meetings.
Quality, not quantity.
Exactly.
And here we are, Lake Champlain at the, what's this club called again? St. John's Club. Looking at the Adirondack Mountains in New York State. Above Lake Champlain with a beautiful sunset. A lot of people yakking. We had some nosh and some libation. We got Adirondack chairs. It's all good here.
I'm not falling asleep.
Gordon's not falling asleep, he says.
Look at those clouds. Look at that. Even when they're not incredible, they're incredible.
Which will we lose first, clouds or alcohol? Gordon, clouds or alcohol?
Alcohol. Tough choice though, because alcohol you can make from just about anything.
Well, you need clouds though for rain, moisture, or something.
Clouds. I mean, they might be so massive that they kill us all with flooding rains, or they might be high and thin and do nothing. But they'll always be.
They might be pyroclastic, whatever. Pyroclastic.
Yes.
They could be clouds of death raining down, radioactive fallout after the nuclear war.
But there still be clouds.
But not today.
We've secretly replaced Kevin's normal breakfast cereal with Viscereal, the really intense breakfast cereal. Let's watch on our hidden camera to see how he likes it.
Aw, man, the Cubs lost again yesterday. They're going to blow it. It's going to be just like 69 all over again. People are going to drown themselves in Lake Michigan. Ah, Leo DeRocher, Billy Goat. I can't stand it anymore. Wow, this is intense cereal.
Try Viscereal, the really, really intense breakfast cereal.